Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation just got a little bit more tricky in a pivotal week where the answer, even if it wasn't simple, had a reason to decide, yes, this is where you go. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackpine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday, enjoyed it with their loved ones, and now we are back to Pittsburgh Steelers football and a pivotal week for the Steelers. And above everything, above every injury, above every other headline, above every possible move that the Steelers can make in the offseason and drama and culture and whatever you want to talk about, sits the quarterback and where the Pittsburgh Steelers go in week 17 against the Seattle Seahawks. And coming into the week, it was tricky, but there was reason to just make things as simple as possible, to not overcomplicate a decision and say, hey, let's ride the hot hand. After the game on Saturday, everybody had the same idea. You start Mason Rudolph. There is no reason to go back to Kenny Pickett. Not right now, not in week 17. Things could change in week 18. Things could change by halftime of the Seahawks game. But starting in Seattle in week 17, it should be Mason Rudolph. And I'm sure that I am not alone by saying that everybody, and I mean everybody, came up and talked to me, and every time a Steelers conversation was presented, it was about how Mason Rudolph should be the starting quarterback. There is no reason for the Pittsburgh Steelers to turn away from a guy who seemingly has the hottest hand in the quarterback room. Everybody had those conversations on Christmas. Now we start this week, and things get complicated. According to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, Kenny Pickett is ready to return. He's healthy enough to play. And he believes, or the Steelers believe, that he is capable of being a starting quality winning quarterback in week 17 against the Seattle Seahawks, just 4 games after initially suffering a high ankle sprain and undergoing tightrope surgery to make that recovery more aggressive. Awesome. Except for the fact that until today, until that report, until Kenny Pickett was ready to go, the Steelers had a very simple reason to make sure that Mason Rudolph was the starting quarterback in week 17 against the Seattle Seahawks, and that was to protect Kenny Pickett, because that is the argument, and the only argument everybody is going to make. Well, it makes things very complicated for the future. If Kenny Pickett is not your guy in week 17, what type of message are you sending to him and the team moving forward? If he's not 100%, that message is we're protecting him. We're keeping him as healthy as possible. There is no reason to rush him back if we do not need to rush him back. But if he's a full participant in practice the next 3 days, if Mike Tomlin opens up his press conference today and says, yeah, Kenny is ready to go and he is healthy and he's not inactive in week 17 against the Seahawks, things get very complicated. They get very, for the Steelers at least, you now have things to think about and future considerations to put into place. And I get it all. I don't think it changes anybody's mindset. I don't think it changes the answer to your question. I just think it makes things a little bit more tricky, a little bit more complicated for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because yes, you are sending a weird message to Kenny Pickett and to the rest of the fan base and to the rest of the locker room if Mason Rudolph starts in week 17 despite Kenny Pickett being your guy and being healthy enough to go. But the Steelers can't really weigh that, and if they do weigh that, it's going to be outweighed by the fact that right now they're just trying to get into the playoffs. And it doesn't matter what you're doing next season until this season's over. And right now, the season is still alive. And that's crazy to say because with Kenny Pickett at the helm and the Steelers winning and then struggling, that season was over. Okay, it's alive again. There's no reason to turn the clock back. There's no reason to turn the clock forward. You focus on this game. Mike Tomlin says it all the time, and you could believe him or you could not. But he constantly says we are only focused. We are singularly focused on week 17 against the Seattle Seahawks. And if you are singularly focused on week 17 against the Seattle Seahawks, the option is easy. It is Mason Rudolph, because you ride the hot hand. You see what you can get out of this guy, and you don't think the worst. And I think that's the biggest thing here is there is many out there. There are many of fans, many media, many analysts, many whoever who have to believe maybe Mason isn't a franchise quarterback, and he probably isn't a franchise quarterback. And truthfully, I hope I'm wrong, because Mason's a good dude who works hard, who has kept such a professionalism to him over the last couple of years when most guys would not. They would make things a little bit more concerning. They'd cause some drama. They wouldn't be here to help. I mean, there are plenty across the league, plenty in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room who have and who are doing it now. Mason Rudolph, not that guy. Never has been that guy. Always been here for his teammates. Always had his head up. Always just said, hey, look, it is what it is. I have to deal with what I have to deal with. I'm in this position, and I'm blessed to be here. That's an attitude you can get behind. That's a player that you can support, and that's who Mason Rudolph is. So, yeah, I do, to a degree, hope that he becomes a franchise quarterback in the NFL. Doesn't mean that I want him to surpass Kenny Pickett, and it doesn't mean that the Steelers want him to surpass Kenny Pickett. But right now, in Week 17, it's just about winning a football game and keeping this season alive. And Mason Rudolph showed you that he's your best option to do so. And maybe by the end of the first quarter in Seattle, he's not. Then you go back to Kenny Pickett. And yeah, that makes things even stranger. But for right now, that's your option. And when it comes to the offseason, it's just about being transparent. It's about Mike Tomlin being who everybody says Mike Tomlin is. And that is a straightforward guy who tells it to you as it is. And right now, he should tell Kenny Pickett, look it, the season has been a roller coaster ride. And you are our guy. Doesn't mean that you are locked into anything, but chances are that in the offseason, the Steelers are going to have this conversation with them anyways and say, look, we brought in this guy for competition, and this is a real competition. You have the upper hand, but this is real. Right now, it's the same conversation. Hey, you are our guy in the offseason. We're probably going to bring in competition, but we want you to be that guy. We want you to prove yourself. But right now, Mason's the hot hand, and we're going to ride the hot hand. And that doesn't mean that you're done. It doesn't mean that your season's over. It just means that right now in Week 17, on a game-to-game basis, Mason Rudolph is the quarterback that we're rolling with. Doesn't matter if Kenny practices all week. And I think that you do practice Kenny with the ones a little bit. I think you don't split it 50-50, but maybe 75-25 just to make sure that Kenny is ready to go and accumulated back with his guys and everything's ready and set for Saturday, against the Seahawks, and things are okay. I think that's what you handle, or how you handle this week of practice. And then come game day, it's Mason Rudolph's team for right now. And that's a big component of this. Stop looking past week 17. Stop looking past the Seattle Seahawks. Stop looking into the future. Stop looking into the offseason. Stop looking into how complicated things get moving forward, and just look at right now. And right now is the only thing that should matter to the Pittsburgh Steelers. You win, you keep your hopes alive. You lose, you might as well start Kenny Pickett, because chances are this season's dead anyways. So who cares? Grow your quarterback. But that's not where we are. It's not where the Pittsburgh Steelers are. It's not where the Pittsburgh Steelers mindset is or should be. Things are getting more complicated. The return of Kenny Pickett certainly adds a twist to a week that was already pretty difficult for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it should not change their mind and should not change their answer in week 17. Kenny Pickett may be the guy in the future. Mason Rudolph is the guy this week.